What's going on, everyone? It's Ben from YGO from Zero, back with another retro Yu-Gi-Oh video, back with another Stein Format video, and this will actually be my last video in Stein Format. Now, for those of you who've been following the channel for a while, you might be wondering, why is this your last video in Stein Format? You usually spend a lot more times in formats like this, especially with a lot of new cards added to the pool, and the reason for that is I'll be starting my coverage of Chimera format soon, which is basically Stein Format, but without Cyber-Stein in the format. And so that means a lot of the sort of rogue or jank strategies that I'd be playing in Stein format are just much better in Chimera Tech. They're basically the same, but, you know, there's no Steiner decay to worry about, so they're not, like, gate kept out of the meta. So for that reason, I'm not really going to be going through a ton of different, like, rogue and jank strategies that are newly introduced to Stein format, because it's just much better to cover them in the next format. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And so this will be my last video in Stein format. I had to show off one last video before I left, though, and that is a hero video. You know, I've said that I'll be making a hero video for every format, you know, since their introduction, and Stein is a format since their introduction, so I got to play this deck. And this is very, very similar to the last video I did for Heroes back in Chaos Return format. Very, very similar idea. The main difference is that Future Fusion is now legal. So the idea with this is that, okay, with Future Fusion now legal, maybe you can use it as a double Foolish Burial, sending your elemental heroes, and pair it with Miracle Fusion, just instantly turbo out a hero monster. So I figured that's pretty good. And given that we're on the Future Fusion, I decided also to add Blade Edge, because, you know, you can reveal Elemental Hero Wild Edge, send a Wild Heart and a Blade Edge, and then you can potentially bring back the Blade Edge with, like, Pre-Mat or Call the Haunted or something. You can't bring back your Hero Fusions with these cards, so it can be good just to have a big body that you can Foolish to the graveyard and get back. So that's kind of nice. Beyond that, like, not much has changed here, so I'm not really going to go through, like, the full card by card. I basically just took out things that were banned, added in an extra exiled force, because that's newly semi-limited, so I figured it would be good to have there. Added in a Future Fusion. I think I added in a third e-call as well, given we're playing a little bit more heroes, given, like, the Blade Edge and things like that, so I felt like one more e-call would be fine, all things considered. But, you know, basically, our idea here is that we're trying to turbo out Hero Fusions. Now, the flaw with this deck is that the Hero Fusions are not really the best thing in the world, especially the ones we have available to us now. There's no, like, Absolute Zero or anything like that. All we've got are, like, Wild Edge, you know, Wild Wingman, Thunder Giant. I have this here mainly as just a filler card, but you go into Elemental Hero Shining Phoenix Enforcer or Elemental Hero Shining Flare Wingman, because a Sparkman plus a King of the Swamp turns into that. We've got Rampart Blaster here. We got Necroid Shaman. And that's going to do it for the really, like, playable heroes that you would be playing. And frankly, those are not quite that good. But, you know, we're playing them anyways. They're an iconic strategy from this time. So let's dive into the games. But before we do, if you're not already subscribed, definitely subscribe to the channel. Grow the channel more. Grow the community as well. And enable us to grow out these formats more, because I think there's a lot of fun formats to explore. Stein format may not be the most popular format, but it is a format out there that I'm sure people would enjoy if they tried it. So, you know, growing the community helps with getting bigger tournaments and events and things like that. So definitely subscribe if you haven't already. But without further ado, let's dive into the games. I only got one match in this format with the hero deck, but I'm facing Aratos, who's a frequent guest on the channel, so always a pleasure to have them on. And we're going to be diving in. The reason I only got one match with this deck is that, in all honesty, I think it just really cannot compete in this format. You could argue they couldn't really compete in Chaos format either, or Chaos Return format, that is. But here it just feels like so much worse, because I think the Stein decks are just much better in this format than previously. They've got Ring of Destruction now. There's no Chaos. So they don't have to worry about that deck. So, yeah, I think this, unfortunately, is just majorly outclassed here. Now, this is a very, very interesting hand. We have a couple different options here. We could go for a Future Fusion right off the bat, set up our graveyard a bit for a Miracle Fusion potentially later, but also just threaten to bring out a big guy in the coming turns. So I think I like doing that, but first I'm going to go for a Rhoda here, grabbing a Warrior Lady just to try and deal with that set. No need to go for the Future Fusion in main 1. I feel like that's probably not a Morphing Jar there. So I can just go for this now. They've got Mirror Force here, and our Warrior Lady falls, which is a bit unfortunate, but it's fine. We're going to go for the Future Fusion now to send a Blade Edge and a Wild Heart to go for the Wild Edge here, and reveal that to our opponent. There we go. And, you know, I figure that's a decent threat to establish, but also if we draw into, like, Call the Haunted or Premature Burial, we'll have Blade Edge there, and that's pretty good. We've got a Clayman in hand, and we've got a Rhoda Disturb for, like, a Sparkman or something like that if we want to do a Thunder Giant play or something, or if we, you know, want to get these engraved for a Miracle Fusion. So I figure it's better to turn on access to these elemental heroes rather than the Sparkman and Clayman, which would be our only other option for Future Fusion. But we're going to set a Book of Moon here. pass back to our opponent. They're going to go for a breaker here. We're just going to book that down so they can't pop the future fusion. They're going to flip up a Mystic Tomato here, tack in for 1400, which is a bit awkward for us. They're going to set 2, pass back to us. We draw into a Sparkman. So if we draw into a Poly, we're feeling pretty good here. We're going to go for a Exiled Force. They're popping the tomato, just pass back to them. You know, we don't really have another thing like DD Warrior Lady in the deck to banish the tomato. Maybe we could play DD Warrior in the future. But I feel like it's fine just going for Exiled here. Opponent's going to flip up this breaker, go for TT, and that's a bit scary. They're going to go for this Last Will as well, go for a Stein, and then pay 5 and get in for probably lethal damage. And they're going to bring out an Exiled Force as well and attack in for game. Now, we could have set the Rhoda here as a bluff. I felt like I didn't need to do that because I wasn't sure, you know, how they would necessarily get in for lethal, but I guess, you know, there are many ways for these decks to do that. I mean, if they had hard drawn Stein, that also would have been lethal, so maybe it would have been better to set the Rhoda there. But I think it was fine holding it. If they had heavy, then we would have been blown up by that, and I wanted Rhoda for the toolboxy option. But you know, in Stein format, your opponent's just occasionally going to win games from Stein, right? That's something that's going to happen. You can try and mitigate that the best you can, but even with mitigating, even with a bluff potentially, our opponent might have just, you know, gone for the TT play anyways, because Future Fusion is bringing out a Wild Edge next turn, so it might have been the best thing for them to do either way. But and also they had Exiled in hand to deal with Wild Edge, so yeah, I think that we were kind of cooked here no matter what, and I feel like my opponent probably would have gone for an aggressive play here, or maybe even not that, maybe just flipped up the breaker, attacked him for 16, and then TT'd the Wild Edge when that came out, and then, you know, potentially set up for a different play later. So you never know what's going to happen here, but unfortunately, we did get Stein Decayed game 1, and I think that's just the deck getting a bit outclassed. Now, I decided in 2 T-Roars here for game 2 because, you know, against Stein Decay, it is good to have threatening roars to sort of stop them from being able to get super aggressive, and we do draw one of those T-Roars now. We're going to set that pass back to our opponent. We've got a really cool play set up here where we can go Rhoda for 2 heroes, and then go Graceful Charity, pitch both, and then Miracle Fusion out a guy. That would be Thunder Giant here, because, you know, we can't Rhoda for Blade Edge, but, you know, still cool combo there, so that'll be fun to do if we do manage to set that up there. Opponent's going to bring out a Sangan, though, attack in for 1,000. That does complicate things, but I don't necessarily want them to get a search here, so what I'm going to do here, we draw King, which is really, really good as well, but unfortunately our opponent has Dust Shoot to send back the King of the Swamp. King of the Swamp would have opened up our options a lot more here, but unfortunately we cannot do that anymore. We're going to go for a Rhoda, though, grab Warrior Lady, and just go for Warrior Lady attack into the Sangan here. We could have also gone for Graceful or something, but I feel like, you know, it's better to wait for us to draw a hero monster, so that way we can get full value off the Miracle Fusion and the Graceful combo that I mentioned before. And also we want to clear the Sangan, but they do have the ring there to stop the Warrior Lady, so unfortunately we're taking 15 from that. They're going to tribute over that Sangan for a Mobius here. We do have the Threatening Roar, so we can chain that at least, but that Mobius is going to be a bit annoying for us to deal with here. Draw into another Exiled Force. That's not ideal, but it is something. We're going to go for Rhoda here, grabbing this Sparkman. Just trying to set up for like a Thunder Giant if we can get it. We're going to go for a Graceful Charity here. We draw into Wildheart and Sparkman. So those two can't fuse together. We don't have the King of the Swamp engrave. That would be pretty nice. And we can't send King of the Swamp off Future Fusion, because you can only send cards listed on a Fusion monster, and King of the Swamp is not listed. It can just replace a monster on a Fusion monster. So, yeah, it's kind of an awkward end. I want to keep Future Fusion, though, because then I can go for the Future Fusion and Miracle play directly. So what I do is I just pitch the Sparkman and the Wildheart here, just to get more fodder engraved for more Miracle Fusions later. I go for the Future Fusion here, sending Blade Edge and Wildheart, and then I go for a Miracle Fusion directly into the Wild Edge. I could have also just gone Exiled Force here, but I think it's better just to have a big guy on board. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to attack in to the Mobius here. So that's going to go through. They're going to take 200. We're just going to set this book, pass back to them. And I feel like with book, we have a bit of a defensive option. You know, if they bring out Warley, we book it down, Exiled Force it next turn, and then we can just get in with Wild Edge. So I'm feeling pretty good about this overall. They're going to go for heavy here, and that is a bit annoying for me. I choose not to book down the Wild Edge, because I want them to take slightly more damage off of Warrior Lady crashing into the Wild Edge. This doesn't play into, like, BrainCon, but if they got BrainCon, I'm probably losing at some point anyways, because the whole point of my deck is sticking a big guy on field and doing things with it, and BrainCon just means the moment I do that, they just take control of it and win the game. So I feel like it's better just to do this. They've got exiled anyway, so they're able to pop the Wild Edge. They'll set one, pass back to us. We draw a T-Roar, which is, you know, okay. If they do like a big push, we can use that. That's kind of nice. They're going to just go for a DD Warrior Lady here, attack in for 15, drop us down to 4k, and we can deal with that with an Exiled Force. We draw Poly here, which is not really the best. we're very, very low on resources, and polys later in the game can be pretty bad for us. But we draw what we draw, and that is what it is. So we go for Comfy here just to get a peek at what they're working with. See, they've got a Zaborg, a Sidra, and a Jinzo here. So I'm just going to send the Sidra, get that out of the picture. I could also potentially commit an Exiled Force here, just attack in for 1,000 here. Just to try and drop them below Stein range as quickly as possible. But if they draw into another Sidra, I don't want to deal with that. Also, if they've got like BrainCon or maybe even Soul Exchange, although I doubt they're playing that. But there are plenty of ways that they can convert off the Exiled Force that we'd bring out here. So I don't think the damage is worth it. They're just going to set one pass back to us. We draw DD Assailant, which is pretty good. We're going to bring out this Exiled Force, pop that tomato, and pass back to them. They're going to set one pass back to us. We draw a Wild Heart, so that's pretty good. We can go for Wild Heart, attack in for 15. We also could have potentially kept the Wild Heart in hand in case we draw it into like a King of the Swamp to pair with our Poly here. But I think it just is better to do this because, you know, those traps could be like TT, it could be like Saku, it could be something else. So I feel like it's better just to attack in here with the Wild Heart and get in that damage, drop them below 5,000 so that way they can't Stein us out of nowhere. They're going to set another pass back to us. We draw another Poly. Kind of unfortunate. We kind of want to be searching those off of King of the Swamps if we can. But they've got to call the Haunted here so they can bring back that Mobius there. It's going to be a little bit awkward for us. We can't clear that. And we're just going to pass back to them. We don't want to set the Assailant here because if they just go Zaborg, pop Assailant, attack into Wildheart, that's not good for us. So I'd rather just keep the Assailant there. We're going to T-Roar in the standby phase here just because we don't want them to summon out Jinzo, shut off our T-Roar. That'd be a bit awkward for us. So I'm just going to T-Roar, force them to use the Zaborg right away. And they're going to pass back to us. We draw Miracle Fusion, but we actually don't have materials engraved for it. You know, we don't have any King of the Swamps, which really tie the fusion materials together, and there's no fusion monster made up of Sparkman and Wildheart, so we can't actually use Miracle Fusion here, and that's one of the awkward things about this deck, where like the hero fusion package isn't quite built up enough yet to enable you to like make fusions out of any combination of two heroes. So it's a bit awkward for us there. Unfortunately, not much we can do here. I just decided to go for the Assailant attacking into the Zaborg. I could have also set the Assailant, but I don't want to play into a Zaborg if they just summon that out and attack in. And also I figure if they do have like traps that can stop this attack, then we need to eat through them now because, you know, I mean, unless we draw like heavy or something to wipe away the board, we're probably not going to be able to eat through those profitably here if we bring out like one of our boss monsters here. So I figured it's better just to go for it now. If they've got a battle trap to stop this, they've got a battle trap to stop this. We're probably losing either way in that case. But if they don't, you know, we manage to clear this board, put them in a bit of a tricky spot. But unfortunately, they do need to have the Saku there, so they're able to stop our Assailant. We're just going to set the Poly as a bluff. You know, we're kind of cooked here at this point no matter what. They bring out a Jinzo here, attack in for 24. There are some things that maybe do it, but Poly is not one of them. So we... yeah, drew all the fusions, but none of the materials lined up for us there. And that is one of the flaws of this deck. You know, on top of the fusion monsters being kind of underwhelming overall, again, the fusion deck just isn't quite built up enough to, you know, enable you to be able to make full use out of all your fusion materials engraved. You know, if there was a fusion between Sparkman and Wildheart at this point, then we would have been able to do something here, but there is not. So we're unable to do anything with that. And we do play the triple polys and triple miracle fusions because it is good to do like an early game play or just have something to search off King of the Swamp. But it can definitely backfire here if you draw them all and you don't draw your kings or things like that. So that's one of the major flaws of the deck. The other flaw is that the fusion material, or not the fusion materials, but the fusion monsters are not really that good, even if you manage to sick them. Like something like a Monarch is a much better payoff for much less investment. And yeah, that's the biggest flaw of this deck. Shouldn't be surprising to most people that this deck is not really that good at this point, but still cool to see it evolve over time. And Future Fusion is kind of neat, so I wanted to show it off here before we dove into Chimera Tech format, where it's probably going to see a lot more play because, you know, I could have shown the other Future Fusion OTKs that you can do in this format with things like Chimera Tech Dragon and also Five-Headed Dragon. You can do stuff with that. But I figured it would be better to show that off in Chimera Tech format itself because, one, namesake of the format, and two, you know, Stein OTK is still the best sort of OTK you can do in this format. Although there are interesting things you can do with Future Fusion to support Stein OTK, where if you're playing like Cyber Dragon and Cyber-Stein in the deck, you can potentially go for Future Fusion, reveal Chimera Tech over Dragon, send a Stein in addition to your Cyber Dragon to grave, and then revive it with something. So there are neat things you can do with Future Fusion, even in like, you know, non-super devoted decks to it, because Cyber Dragon is a card that just sees play a lot of the time in a lot of different decks. But, you know, I just wanted to show off a more devoted Future Fusion deck before we left this format for good. So that's going to be my last Stein Format video for the foreseeable future. I will be having a tournament in Stein Format next month on the YGO from Zero Discord server, linked in the description down below. So definitely join that if you want to participate in that tournament. And also just join if you want to participate in weekly locals or games in this format or any other format that are featured on the channel. Also, let me know what you think of this deck down in the comments below. Do you think that, with a bit of tinkering with the ratios and stuff, this deck could actually be a better threat in the format? Or do you think that it just is pretty garbage at this point in time and there isn't really much you can do to change it that much? Let me know down in the comments below. I look forward to discussing with y'all as always. And until next time, well, actually not until next time, because I got to shout out the patrons. Big shout outs to my patrons on Patreon. If you join the Patreon, you get a shout out in these videos. So big shout outs to GMYFS, Rinswin, Porkchop Coon, Bren Donker, Tyler Compton, and Dump Truck. It really means a lot that you all support me this way and encourage me to make more videos like this in the future. But that's going to do it for this video. Until next time, I've been Ben from YGO from Zero, and I'm signing off.